Good evening, and let's walk through Geregu Power 9M 2025 numbers. Geregu Power is a power generating company listed on the NGX. Some disclaimer, some housekeeping. Nothing I say is financial or investment or personal finance advice in any shape or form. Please do your own research. My views are subject to change at any point in time. I am not bound to share all my views or share my changing views on the channel. I may or I may not hold a position in any of the assets discussed. Lastly, I receive no compensation whatsoever from any party, any of the subject matters, any of the personnel of this company, or any parties related to the company in any shape or form. Let's look at the Q3 numbers for this firm. Q3 meaning the last 3 months, July, August, and September this year versus the same period last year. A strong performance. I mean, revenue up 37.3% to 43.8 billion. Profit after tax up 17.7% to 4.9 billion. Margin wise, that's pretty decent. I mean, I like to look at profit margins for a firm. Profit margins is when you take a profit after tax divided by or revenue. Yeah, my math is correct. So if you work out the profit margins for this firm, it's looking like profit margins of slightly higher than 10%, below my cutoff target point of 20% profit margins. But what I'm seeing here is at this run rate, for every 100 naira in revenue, just a bit over 10 naira is profit. So that's pretty decent, but I think it should and can be much better. But decent Q3 for the firm. Now let's go look at the 9 months numbers, the combined numbers for January to September. The numbers are slightly weaker, and that's because earlier in the year there was a bit of softness in some of the previous quarters. So you have 131 billion in revenue, up 16%, 16.7% from last year. Profit after tax of 25 billion, flattish in my view, because the 3.7% increase is not an increase, to be candid, but numerically speaking, for accuracy's sake, it is an increase. Practically speaking, there's not much of an increase. So clearly, some quarters were soft in the previous quarter. A few of the previous quarters were soft. Earnings per share 10 naira and 4 kobo. So strong Q3, making up, I must say, probably for the softness in some of the previous quarters. So let's go look at the earnings forecast. I have revised my earnings forecast for this firm downwards. I want to see the previous earnings forecast. Check out the video I did on the H1 numbers for the firm. So now my current forecast is 12 naira for full year FY 2025 earnings, and it's quite easy to see how I arrived at that. You had 9 months at 10.04, Q3 at 1.97. Assume Q4 maintains the same performance, and what does that give you? That gives you 12 naira, maybe 12 naira 50 kobo to account for some slightly higher increase. Dividend wise, I think this firm would probably pay a dividend of around 9 naira and 29 kobo. It's possible they may pay slightly higher than that or slightly lower than that, because if you have earnings coming in at 12, management might decide, hey, let's just do 80% and let's see what that gives us as well. So clearly, dividends, I mean, dividend is good, but the share price is so high, because if you have share price at over 1,100 and you're paying a 10 naira dividend or whatever you pay, or 8.5 naira, that's nothing really. And so you can see that the dividend yield of this stock is quite poor, simply because the price is so high. So it's not that, numerically speaking, the dividend of 10 naira is pretty decent. But it would also depend on when you bought the stock. I mean, anybody who's holding this stock and bought it at the high 700, 800, 900, nah, it doesn't make sense. If you got in early, then probably it makes sense. And that's where you have the likes of the majority shareholder, Femi Otedola, who probably has gotten a decent return on this stock from a capital appreciation perspective. So, my opinion is a sell, and it's quite easy to see. Stock is trading, I mean, at its current price, if you work out the numbers, you say 1145 divided by probably one of these days I'll do a live screen session so you can see that it's not just slapping numbers on the screen. You have 1145 divided by 12, and that gives you a 95.4. So clearly I don't see any upside for this stock at 90, trading at over 95 times earnings, as almost 10 times higher, or at least 6 to 7 times higher than the average P ratio on the exchange. So I see no room for further price upside for this stock. The dividend yield also is tiny. Ideally, I like to see a dividend yield somewhere between 10-15%. Worst case scenario, one could manage 5 to 7%. Even though I would argue that if you're having banks doing a 3 point something, 4 point something percent per annum for your basic as savings account as interest, and your dividend yield should probably be doing double that to account for the risk. And so ideally your dividend yield should be 10%. Anything less than that is not worth it. In my opinion, the stock is illiquid though. So if you are in this stock, it's highly unlikely. It might take you a while that you know for you to be able to exit this stock. It's highly liquid. I think about over 80% of this stock is held by Femi Otedola. So it's very unlikely. There's just not much trade in this stock. Um, but there's something I want you to keep an eye on for this firm. And there are two numbers here. Okay, this is legible. Am I on time? Yes, I am. So two numbers to keep an eye on for this firm. You have trade and receivables. Essentially, money is being owed 170.3 billion. And then you have trade and other payables. The bulk of that, I think, over maybe 90 to 100 billion rather of that is gas payables. Now the receivables, if it's possible, I know the federal government um is owing some chunk of money on that. If they are able to, settle everybody in the system, so government settles the discos, I think discos settle the gencos. There is some chunk of money that the federal government and its agencies are owing in the power sector. If that is settled and we can have the receivables drop, it is possible some of that money could filter in as a dividend. I mean, you can see retained earnings of 55.1 billion, about 2.5 billion or so shares in issue. 55 divided by 2.5 or so, that gives you uh essentially what you have as retained earnings, about 20 naira per share when you divide that to get retained earnings per share for this stock. So clearly, those are two numbers to watch. Let's see how it goes. I hope you found this useful. Thank you, and see you in the next video.